Welcome to the Graybeard Wisdom Podcast, where host Mark Freeman explores the stories and strategies shaping food service's future. Today's guest is Rob Gordon of Day One Hospitality Consulting. Rob's known for bringing clarity to corporate food service, not from a desk, but from the field. He's walking kitchens, listening to teams, and uncovering what's working across domestic and international sites. In this episode, Rob shares what's relevant now, from shifting workplace dining expectations to global insights on labor, culture, and tech. His perspective is grounded, practical, and refreshingly honest. Let's dive in.
Hey, Rob, how's it going today?
Very well, thank you. Actually, very well. All pretty good today. It's a nice sunny day here in New York.
Good, good. Yeah, it's raining in Seattle, which is normal, you know. Um, I'll throw you a curve right to begin with. We talked about some questions that I might ask and that sort of thing. But one of the first things that I like to start out with is, so you have a LinkedIn profile. What's not on your LinkedIn profile?
Hmm. Interesting. What's not on my LinkedIn profile?
We used to do this as we go around the room. When I worked at LinkedIn, we used to go around the room and everyone would, it was kind of an icebreaker sort of a thing. So we had an opportunity to share, weird and things that, maybe would be interesting to our audience. So give it a go.
So I would say one of the things that I think doesn't come through as well is the leadership aspect. I think we always, when you get into LinkedIn, it's very much resume driven and talks about
Yep.
what you've done. But I think that there's an inherent perspective of what we do in our world as leaders that doesn't really come through or translate on through the through LinkedIn pages.
Sure. Well, so that's a great lead in to giving us an opportunity to hear about your past and present and your leadership skills as you learned them along the way.
Okay, okay. I set myself up for that one, didn't I,
Yeah,
Mark?
you did.
That's fine. That's fine. I'm ready for it.
Okay, well, so tell us a little bit about what you've done in the past and where you're headed.
Sure, sure. So, um, it's interesting. So I think I started off like most people, coming out of school and working in hotels and restaurants for money and for cash and all of that good stuff. Spent a lot of time in hotels and restaurants, and then I found this great world of corporate dining where you can actually lead a normal life, get benefits, and actually see family and friends on weekends, which is
Yep.
something that was unheard of in the other worlds. So that I think is a big piece. And I spent quite a bit of time in the corporate dining sector. I've had the luxury of working for some fantastic institutions. And, I joke around a lot of time that I am the king of non-commercial food service. So other than, the restaurants and hospitality, I've worked in higher education at Columbia University. I've worked at healthcare at Memorial Sloan Kettering, and certainly in the B&I world. So I've been able to kind of, and I've done some work in senior living as well. So I've seemed to be able to kind of work around the non-commercial food service world. And again, very lucky to have worked for some great institutions along the way, not just the fact that I've done it, but those were some of the great pieces. And then, after leaving American Express, after working there for almost 7 years, I started with another organization, a hedge fund that was building a building and had amenity projects and all of those great things. And, after about a year into the role, I kind of felt as though that my work was more consultancy than actually operation because it was starting to build and create and all of that. And it was right down from, from facility management efforts to, health and safety items. And we really built the whole structure up from the ground up. And I got to the point of saying, hey, you know what? I feel as though where my value lies in this is actually being able to help others do this work.
Sure.
Um, so what I ended up starting doing, Russ and I had some great conversations, and it looks like a little over 2 years ago, I joined the team and we started working on, helping clients, learn how to be clients, how for clients to understand some of the nuances in understanding P&Ls. No shot at contractors, but they write P&L so they can understand them. Doesn't always mean that that the client understands them. I think that's why they have a term client operating statement.
Uh-huh.
So we dig in and we help that, and that's really been enjoyable for me. I've liked the fact that instead of being a client for a single location, I get to help other clients be clients and support their needs. And I would say also, Mark, one of the things I think I like best about it, and you probably tell me the same in your opinion, but I learn more in this role because everybody has a different view on what they're doing, and every client has a different focus and different goal. When you are sitting as the client at an organization, you are the subject matter expert. So yes, there is learning. You do understand that there's some things that you gain, but not in the same way that you're exposed to so many different groups had doing different things, working with different people and different mindsets. You have companies that are giving away everything for nothing, and then some that are P&Ls, and everybody's got a different viewpoint. So for me, the part that I really seem to enjoy is the fact that I'm learning more and being able to help and provide more experience-based solutions as opposed to just thought processes that are coming up.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing that you talk about the learning aspect of what you do because, as a client, which both you and I were, you only get kind of a one perspective of what's going on in the whole industry, right? And you as a consultant, like you say, you deal with a lot of different clients, and they all have different personalities. They all have different learning abilities or skills that they bring to the table. And what you as the consultant needs to do is figure out them first and then how to help them, guide them through whatever project work that you're kind of doing. So again, that's again, you're leading me right down the path here. But you know, as you learn more out there in the field, what are you learning? What's some things that are kind of hot right now? I know there for a while it was return to office, and all of the confusion that went along with that. And COVID, my God, everything went south with COVID, but we were kind of through some of that stuff. Now, what's starting to percolate up?
So what we're kind of seeing, or what I'm seeing, is actually just tangentially what you just discussed. Like we talked about return to office, and that's when it was all the amenities, we're giving away food, we're giving away whatever the case is.
Yeah.
So what we're seeing as time has gone on is now companies are trying to figure out ways to unwind themselves from this in a step mod. They know that you just can't rip the band-aid off because we've gone so far one direction. And I think the other part that we're seeing is this is coming more prevalent because most of these agreements are 3 and 5 year agreements. A lot of people got into these contracts right after, they needed to do something. And I always tell people, if you had nothing, now you have a coffee program. If you had a coffee program, you have some sort of food delivery. Something's coming in to create a excitement and amenity or something to that effect. But what we're seeing now is these agreements that have gone over their time, they're 3 and 4 years, they're starting to come due. People are looking at things differently. Cost structures are different. And the real estate play is starting to make a difference too. The one thing I say to people, Mark, is, in the world of real estate, certainly prior to COVID, people were cutting in 10, 20-year deals to make long-term deals to save money and to make sure that they got their rents or their lease payments down to a certain number.
Yep. Yep.
But, again, you can't unwind a lease deal that quickly, right? So as these deals are starting to compete, we're starting to see changes in how people are looking at how they want to use their real estate. We're starting to see a lot of companies not wanting to invest in these full service cafes and full service kitchens. They want to provide food service. Sometimes it's a warming kitchen. We're seeing a lot more of this commissary model becoming involved.
Uh-huh.
So some of that kind of stuff is what we're seeing. And again, we've kind of shifted away from years ago at COVID, we shifted away from cost structure into just what can we do to get people back in the building.
Yeah.
Well, after millions and millions of dollars of spend, after all of these kinds of things, now you're starting to see some financial institutions and some organizations requiring people to come back. There's a shift in how things are being looked at. And financially, you're seeing that as well. I don't think you're seeing companies that want to continue to go down this road of footing the bills to get people back in the office. Now they're making it more of an HR requirement to come back. So those are some of I think the bigger things that I'm seeing lately. And like I said, this commissary model is really starting to become more prevalent, and we're starting to see the contractors really focusing on it as they start building more commissaries localized, to support clients in market.
Yeah, that's interesting to hear that this commissary thing is starting to pick up. Again, back in my history, there was quite a few, especially overseas, there was quite a few, commissary type operations. And I guess I'm at the time, and maybe I'll change, but at the time I wasn't a fan of that because it doesn't seem like it's a real meal that put in front of the customer. It doesn't seem to have the same hospitality, if you will, that a full service cafe would have. How do you think the contractors or the clients even are approaching the idea that, maybe hospitality shrinks a little bit with a commissary model, or the quality of the food, or the ability to, food waste and all the things that go along with sustainability. What do you think about, I mean, that as part of the commissary model? Is that changing?
You know, I think they're getting better at it. I think everybody's getting better at it because of that. And again, I wouldn't call it an innovation in these commissary. I think it's just a cause and effect piece, right? Because
Right.
as people downsize their real estate, with people in, some of these groups are 3 days a week. You don't need to have these services if your shoulder days, Monday and Friday, are really low. So what people are doing is, I think that's how they're looking at it. It's more of a cause and effect on how they're looking their real estate portfolio and trying to match up. So to your point, is it the same hospitality? Not 100%, but I think they've gotten a lot better, smarter about menus and traveling menus. And again, what we are seeing is some don't have any sort of facilities to drop off, so
Yeah.
it's really like a catering. But we are seeing some people putting in like reheat pantries so that you could temp food properly for food safety. And exactly to your point, from a food waste perspective, right? Because we are focusing on food waste, there's a lot of sustainability discussions. So the more you could track and trend it, the better off you are. So we're starting to see the ones that have the opportunities where they have reheat kitchens, they can really go back to what we used to call in the business batch cooking, right? So you're cooking as by need. So I think that that's part of it. And as far as the hospitality goes, as long as you have the right people delivering it, I always tell people hospitality comes from the heart, right? If you have it in your heart,
Yep.
you can
Yep.
deliver it. And I think that, that's one of the things maybe we'll talk about in a little bit is part of the labor piece, right? Is finding good talent. It's been difficult. And part of this difficulty has literally been, people that will come to work in these hospitality environments. We've seen the ups and downs of labor coming in and out of the market of what we do. And when you have these models, you can actually be more focused on front of house because a lot of the back of the house work is coming from the commissary. So your strategy for employment and hiring and labor could be a little bit more focused on hospitality. Um,
Hmm.
Kind of what we're seeing, because a lot of times, that's why we call them back of the house, right? Sometimes once you close those doors of the kitchen, nobody knows what goes on. So you're seeing all of the front and you're kind of eliminating that part in the back. It's always nice to see the chef and always nice to see those kinds of things. It does limit you for, the immediacy of some certain needs. But I think a lot of these groups that are doing it are starting to have, very low priced or free items when they do these commissary models.
Huh.
So, and again, I give the contractors a lot of credit because it has been an improvement, and we just did a RFP for a group that probably saw 5 or 6 different commissaries, and each one of the commissaries they went to was talking about they're looking for another, they're looking to grow. So, yes, it's New York City, but we're starting to see a lot more of a focus on really growing that part of the business.
Well, so what do you think about that? I mean, I have mixed emotions about commissary food coming into my, if I was still in the business of being a client, and, it's like it fits a financial model, but it seems like almost to me like when food trucks first came out. Man, I struggled with food trucks because, it was like this, roach coach kind of thing that was going on. And it's like, Now we're having commissaries, and it's different than, than a full service cafe. I mean, what's your personal opinion on it?
Well, I would tell you it's not my preferred model. I'm very much like you, kind of that old school guy. I like having the ability to create and prepare. Additionally, with the world of allergens now, with the world of all of the items that we touch in our world for safety and in food safety, the traveling, the temperature control. Obviously, for me, I would much rather see that done. You have much more control over items when you're on site. And I think just the ability to customize and work. To your point, one of the things we do see in a lot of these commissary models is if you have a 50 or 75 person team, you may not get a specific meal. You might be getting what the commissary majority is getting out of today. So I
Yeah.
think some of the customization gets lost. So personally, I think the model works, and I think it works for smaller accounts and need-based accounts, the ones that don't have the kitchen. If there's an opportunity, I would much rather see things coming out of a kitchen. I think that there's more to it. And I think, personally, I kind of call it, the Food Network revolution, right? If you've made Thanksgiving dinner, everybody's a professional cook. If you're the Property Brothers and watched a half an hour of a show, you could build something. So nowadays, I think with everybody really focused, people are interested in how things are cooked. People like to talk to the chef and say, "Hey, what's in there?" With the allergens, sometimes, yes, there's some great allergen monitoring and there's some great allergen technology that shows, but you know what? What's the safest way? Talking to the person that made the item to really make you feel safe and secure in your environment. So some of those things I think are a little bit of a miss in the commissary.
Yeah.
Again, you know, menu adherence, recipe development. Sometimes that gets a little better because they have to be more steady. But I just find that personal touch is missing. And if it's my druthers, give me a kitchen where we could cook. I've had the luxury of working in some very big kitchens. You
Yeah.
know, it's one thing we're starting to see some that have like maybe a 60-40 split where 60% is on site, 40% comes from off site. So we're starting to see a little bit more of a shared version. But yeah, from my personal perspective, I'd much rather see full service culinary right on site.
Yeah, yeah, and where my head goes a little bit is like to the customer, in corporate food service, it was always about attract and retain the best and the brightest, right? So how do you get in our case, the digital worker to come in and work? And of course, food was top of the list when they're coming out of college. They've had free food in college, and so now, free food, and so I'm just wondering, does this change, or this kind of shift that's happening, change the attitude of the client or the customer, if you will, and also then how does marketing play into that too? Like you said, people like to talk to the chef, and and the chef is back in some kitchen making soup. It's like, huh? Where does all that, or how do you approach that? And maybe, and we'll get into this. Maybe it's technology that does that. But anyway, a lot of questions wrapped up into that. But I mean, what do you think the customers' perceptions are?
You know, it's kind of interesting. Sometimes I feel in the free feeding, people are just coming up and getting their food and going back to their desk and not really entertaining it. When people, I think it's just, even if it's a high subsidy and you're paying $1 or two, I think just the fact of reaching into your pocket gives you a different opinion
No question
on
about it.
on how things go. You know,
Yep.
I think that free feeding just makes it feel like, hey, you know what, it's a buffet. I'm very happy they put out food and I'm in good shape. Um, but so I think on that part, yeah, there's marketing that's involved that could go around these things. There's a lot of surprise and delights that come along with these areas. Again, a lot of it is based on the front of the house team really kind of engaging with guests and customers because they become really the main part of the team. And I think part of it is some of these groups are the ones that do them on site are typically smaller groups. So the engagement with the management team is a lot greater.
Mm-hmm.
Because like one of a client that literally the client sits next to the food service manager. So that is a great relationship where they can get
Sure.
together, they can see things, they can understand. The hard part about it is really getting the feedback from people, because that's one of the pieces when you're on the floor moving things around, you're always hearing feedback. Like I always used to tell people, my biggest learning lessons, believe it or not, was on the elevators. you know, listening on elevators. And I think
Exactly.
yeah, one of my best comments, I think, was um, the cafeteria is like television. A lot of options, but they all seem to be the same. Like,
Uh-huh.
so, it's something that I just sat there and I took to heart and said, okay, how can we make things different? So some of that kind of engagement, and to your point about the employees, and this isn't all, but a lot of the employees of today, and certainly in the tech world, how do I say this nicely? They don't the idea about jumping from company to company, the loyalty to the organization isn't there like it used to be. Like, we've seen some of these groups, and specifically in the tech sector, some of these programmers that, they'll be at LinkedIn one day, they'll be at American Express the next day, they'll be at Google. They keep jumping. So a lot of times it's about how they don't have to come into the office and how they can work from home using their ability. So engaging some of those groups, that is one of the difficult pieces. How do you get the non-attendees in these commissary models to come in? What's the excitement to get them to come into the office? That's a little bit of that part of it. But I would say, the worker of today, and even from the company perspective, I think loyalty, these 20, 25 year employees, you just don't see it that much anymore. I mean, I think you
Yep.
hit a certain point and, you're looking over your shoulder always.
Yeah, that's what I was saying a while ago when I was in the business was, you know, they're not staying for the gold watch, right? I mean, it at the drop of a hat or a signing bonus, they're gone.
Yeah.
And but I at the time, and I still kind of think this, I think food is a driver for, making a decision on what company to go to next. They may jump around,
Yep.
but if it's free food, then they're calculating that in their head. I don't have to buy lunch, and I don't have to, probably buy dinner, because that was one of the bigger problems is they were taking in free food programs, they're taking it home and feeding their families, right? And so there's this entitlement thing, and you put the numbers together, all of a sudden you just got a raise by going to this company because they have free food, right? So, there's a lot of rumbling going on in there.
No, no, you're right. That I look at it more like an amenity package, right? It's the food, it's the ability, the accessing gyms, it's a lot of those kinds of
Yep.
things. And
Yep.
this is what the conversation was originally in the return to office. You have all of this, personalization and customization while working at home. How can you translate that to the office world, right? So this is what the amenity packages are doing. And again, it could be, look, I mean, when I started working 20, 25 years ago in this field, I don't think I'd ever expect to see a ping pong table or a pool table on a work floor. Now, if you don't see that, you're behind the times, right?
Right.
When I started it at NMS in what, 2014, and there was a hockey table, air hockey table on the floor.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I'm in charge of making sure this thing works. And I'm like, this is a new twist for me.
Yeah.
But people are looking for those to your point, you know, I don't know that it's always dining, but it's the package, right? Am I getting free healthcare? Am I getting
Yep.
these kinds of things when I come to the office? Years ago, I'll leave the name of the company out, but they had a very heavy pantry program here in New York. But
Uh-huh.
they had a program that if you were to come in early, you would get you would get a breakfast, and if you'd stay late, you'd get a dinner. So we saw a lot of people, they would stand like, especially the young group, because they loved the free food, they loved the pantry, and we would start seeing people. They come in for breakfast early, they'd leave, go to the gym, they'd come back and work, they'd go back to do whatever, then come back for dinner, you know. But that was the plan, and I think you make a good point, Mark. If we dial all of what we do back, the original intention of what we do in this corporate dining is about productivity, right? For all these companies to spend the kind of money that they do to provide food and services, even subsidize our P&L, just those costs, it's about making your employees more productive, right? We've seen,
Yep.
number of different polls and talking about, the time saved by not going off campus and doing that, and especially in major markets like New York, Boston, Chicago, there's a
Seattle.
productivity aspect. And listen, I have this conversation with one of our partners, Dan, all the time. We go into these office buildings and have discussions with people and meet with people. We look at each other all the time like, I cannot figure out what the start and end time of a day is anymore. People come in at
Yeah.
10 because they don't want to hit traffic and then they leave at 3. The old days of 9 to 5, it's very hard to discern. Some people, we see people coming at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning because they want to get out early. So, the workday itself is not the same schedule like old classic 9 to 5 that we always remember it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and again, COVID changed all of that, right? And I guess also what, kind of shifting gears, what came with that was technology, right? So, Zoom was something you used once in a while or maybe never, and you never turned your camera on, and all that kind of stuff. And of course, everything changed in a heartbeat when we went into COVID, and then coming out of COVID, it's just become normal to be on a Zoom call and work kind of that ways. But I mean, you're out in the field, you're out in the, all the RFP work that's going on and everything like that. What's out there in the way of technology? What's hot and what's not?
You know, a lot of the focus seemed to what we're seeing is really on employee engagement. So it's about helping meet the customer. And they're using what we're starting to see is a lot of the companies, and they've really done a nice job with this, is really, engaging technology to help employee engagement. And, it's tying into the point of sale, yes, and the order in advance, but more than that, those pieces of the puzzle are giving customer or giving clients and operators the ability to connect with people. What we're seeing is when you're on your if it's your app, I can tell that you haven't been to the cafeteria and participated in X amount of days. I can send special offers directly to you nowadays. And if you don't respond, I can continue to up the offer if I want, because we got to the point where we can be that finite about some of that work. And we're starting to see a lot of what I'm starting to see is more companies focusing on the employee engagement. We're still seeing a lot of the technology in the background, for the waste tracking and all of those things, which I have a completely different opinion on because I'll talk about that later. But as far as on the positive side, a lot of it is really engaging employees. We're starting to also see, the confluence of a bunch of different programs trying to come into a single app so that you can order your food, do your amenities, all of those kinds of things within it, whether it's picking up dry cleaning, all within one single app to kind of help that process. It's kind of like the Amazon Go mentality, right? You just want to have everything at your fingertips. So that's really, I think, the best work that we've seen is about the employee engagement part of the technology. There's a lot of focus on that. And I think because of that, you're getting a lot of data-driven insights, which haven't been available to clients and contractors in the past. Like anything else, like AI, the more you use, the more you put into these systems, the more information you can extract. So the participation in them, getting participation levels up inside those employee-facing technologies, I think has been a pretty good step in the right direction.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's interesting you bring up AI because, I, I, the way I see AI, and you mentioned it earlier, is that there's all this data coming into somewhere, and to me, AI has opened up the door to telling the operator what the data means and how it can be affected, right? And I mean, you bring up customers and customer satisfaction and kind of more front of the house kind of technology that's coming through. I mean, is the is the customer getting and I don't know how to put this, but are they getting the results of the data gathering in the back of the house kind of a thing? Is the AI agent telling them, we've done a really good job in sustainability this week because we saved this much money and or this much food waste or it went to this. I mean, is there this communication or storytelling that's starting to show up based on the data?
Well, so interesting. So on the front end, I do believe so. The front of the house where it's customer facing, I'm starting to think that you are getting good data, participation levels. Again, age of people inside of these corporate environments has gotten lower. So a lot more used to using technology, a lot more used to being savvy around technology. Again, I'll share this, just my opinion. But the back of the house technology, and this is the thing that always kind of makes me a little bit nutty, how, companies and corporations tell you how important it is to get this technology, help run your business effectively. You need this waste program, you need this. But just like you said with AI, garbage in, garbage out, good
Yep.
information in, good information out. The person that doesn't track all the waste and only tracks some of the waste, I'm only tracking off this station. That's not giving you the real data that you need. Some of that. So, those kinds of tools that I see, and it makes me nuts. And one of the things that we look at when we talk to clients is you're paying for all the technology to support your services to run your business better. This is how important it is. We're going to track waste. We're going to track, all of these different things. And we haven't really seen the needle move on the back of the house items, because I feel like it's just, to me, it's just an area for additional money to be made because we're charging for these technology programs that we're in. But for the most part, I don't see a lot of movement on the back of the house. Matter of fact, I can't tell you how many times we go in and we challenge culinary teams on are you using the recipes that's provided? I can't tell you how many kitchens I walk in and when we do Fresh Eyes and we look for recipes, and then the question is, are they scaled in size for the operation? I'll go in and I'll read a food and wine recipe that's made for 4 servings that, that they're going to be doing for, as a for 400 people.
Right.
So, these are the things like, if you're going to settle back into doing the same things you're doing at home, why am I paying for that technology? I'd rather pay for technology that's going to give me good information. The front of the house technology, the sales, all of those the customer information, I think is good. It could be drawn out of a lot of that information. I'm just seeing the back of the house a little bit behind the times with doing, and I think a lot of it is because the inaccuracy of people consistently putting things in. I think like anything else, if you do this consistently, you're going to get a better message. If I'm only counting waste off not my main line item. Listen, if you're making deli sandwiches or you're making a salad bar and it goes out into the public and it can't be reused, what are you doing with it? Those are the things we need to know. Catering tracking, we're ordering X amount of catering for a room. Are we tracking that? Everybody says, I've only seen it done when it's a specific request from a client. So maybe I'm a little jaded on that one, Mark, but I think the front of the house where it's more intuitive is further along than the back of the house where you need more input from human beings.
Yeah, and I wonder, I've been getting deep into the AI world, and I'm just wondering if the AI agents are going to be, are we going to have chefs running around with, headsets and microphones on, talking to the agent, telling them exactly what's going on so that the agent can then help them become more efficient? Like you say, they're inefficient now. There's a lot of technology back there, but who's reading the dashboard, and and who's who's making sure that the agent who we think might have the right information is guiding the chef, because the chef always knows. You always know what's good, what's right, and they
Right.
don't always know. Is what I found out when I was at Microsoft is that we did some man versus machine, targeting, and the machine won every time. And so finally the chefs decided, well, maybe I'll start listening to the machine, right? So so I'm just wondering with this new AI stuff that's coming in, and it's pretty amazing some of the stuff that's going on. If that's going to change, if the back of the house is going to become more efficient, I don't know.
Well, what? I think the biggest trick is the ability to sit back and learn from AI, right? Because AI gives you a lot of good information, but my opinion is you still need the human touch to kind of decipher where it is, right?
Yep.
Living in that environment, out there talking to guests, understanding, you could parse the AI information with what you're hearing and really kind of create something. We're starting to see some of these labor that people aren't just using the AI information to help make decisions. So they're capturing the AI information. It's great to show clients. It's great. It's a pretty topic. The old Tableau dashboards that we used to always know. I mean, they
Yep.
come out great. They tell us, and listen, we always know that, those machines could also tell the story that you want to tell as well, not just a story,
That's right.
but the story you want to tell.
Yeah.
So I think the real success of it is really parsing out that digital technology with the human experience and understanding what's going on to make better decisions, right? I think if you take the information you get with AI and the knowledge base that you have as an operator, that helps you be indispensable to your guests. If you're relying on just talking to guests, hey, you see 1,000 people in a day, you talk to 20 of them, that's not giving you your sample size. But if I can take those sample size with what I've learned from AI on the aggregate, now I could deliver a program, a food item, whatever that might be, more focused on delivering what we believe from our understanding is a client need.
So again, you're out in the field and technology, you know, and you talked about, labor shortages and things earlier. Are you seeing any robotics coming into the kitchen?
Honestly, in all of the kitchens I've walked through, I have really not seen them. And all of the food shows, I can't tell you how many, hamburgers made by a robot or things passed through into a hot box. We are starting to see a lot more of the, from a technology of the, just the walk out technology kind of stuff, like the Amazon Go stores
Yeah.
that we're seeing. But from the robotics part, really just kind of what I've been seeing mostly is, the food lockers, the ambient or the hot and cold food lockers. But I'm just not seeing the robotics. I mean, yes, I've seen them. I think they look pretty interesting. I think it's more some of the fast food items where people are more specific. Something maybe in corporate dining, you have such a wide variety of programming that, it's hard to kind of work in. Plus, a lot of it is the infrastructure, and to go and build robotics, to a good spot would be on the grill, right? Your burgers, your chicken, all of that, your French fries, that's a great spot for robotics. But most of these locations have them right in front of the customers still because, so it's hard to kind of get that. Years ago I looked at and I thought it was the coolest thing, looking at the robotics for coffees. Like so, actually with the arms, and I've seen some great different things.
Yeah.
And it becomes a show, right? Because it's in
Yep.
front of you. But a lot
Yep.
of that you lose if it's back of the house, right? Part of the idea of having the robotics is that you could see it. So when that arm comes down and it puts it underneath and coffee comes out, there's an experience involved with it. If it's back of the house, yeah, there's a labor optimization, some of those kinds of things. There's some savings in it, you know, but I don't think you're getting the visual perspective that you'd hope for as if it was in front of a customer or client.
Yeah, yeah. Where that takes me to is when I was at Ford, I went out on the production lines and they've got robots all over the place building cars. But when you buy a car, you never think about that. I mean, it's the customer side of it is you just want the keys and, make sure there's gas in it and let's go. But there is this other thing that goes on in the back of the house in the case of building a car that, again, there's a lot of robotics. I sat there and I was amazed by some of the stuff that they do. And then like earlier, like what you were saying with AI is that the human becomes the monitor. So was this out of tolerance or was that out of tolerance? And did it break the windshield when it put it on all those kinds of things, right? So I think that there's still a piece for the humans to come in. I know I haven't been there yet, but I'm going to go. There's a restaurant now in Los Angeles that Tesla has, and it's all run by robots, right? And they're humanoids, so they're running around the kitchen and they're doing what humans do. And I haven't heard anything too much positive about it, but it's that kind of stuff may be coming because of what's going on in the labor market, right? I mean, they're struggling. Everybody's struggling to get workers to come in, especially in the hospitality industry, right?
Yeah, and I think it goes back to even your Ford comment, right? I mean, you're talking about unionized workers, which between cost and benefit rate and retirement programs, it gets to be expensive. And days off, vacation time, a lot of all that stuff that comes in when you have, you're doing a robot, you're kind of you're solving a lot of those answers. But I think that's the difference between, hospitality and manufacturing, right? Like I said
Yep.
earlier, hospitality comes from the heart. So there has to be an emotional sense of it, or we'd like to see an emotional sense. And I think that might be one of the pieces that it's a miss. And that's why, I'm a fan of the AI and the robotics. I think there's a place and a time, but if you can engage somebody and create an experience and have that, like to your point of the restaurant where you see it in action, then it's an experience. It's kitschy. It's something, there's a
Yeah.
takeaway outside of just the food, and similar like with that coffee program. But if people are doing it in the back of the house, it's like in Ford, it's really about efficiency. It's not about experience. It's about efficiency.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Um, so again, switching gears a little bit, and you kind of alluded to it earlier about sustainability, and what are you seeing in the out in that in the field, if you will, around sustainability? Is it, is food waste still as important as it was? Is sustainability, is it, reusables versus disposables, and all the things that kind of go with that? Are you seeing any kind of either emphasis or de-emphasis on sustainability?
Sustainability, we definitely see it's still a focus and actually gaining more. And I will tell you in some of the upgrades and the renovations and things that we've seen, we're starting to see people put dish rooms back in, which is really kind of a nice story.
Yeah.
We went away from dish rooms, and I mean, look, you and I probably could count how many times we've closed a dish room and moved to disposable over our career. But it's nice to know that people are going back, right? If you really want to be, again, we always talk about it's reduce, reuse, recycle. So those are your three models, right? So your first one before you recycle is to reduce, right? That's your biggest focus on sustainability is to bring down those items. So reusable items like, plates and silverware and those kinds of things. And again, you could get those at inexpensive costs. Some of the disposable goods have really come down in price, but what I would say, Mark, is I always call it completing the circle, right? So I buy the compostable goods, I treat them right. They're going to get commingled in my garbage, so I'm not going to be able to use them. And then when it's all said and done, I have no place to compost them to because
Right.
only certain carters compost. And I thought years ago when I was at Sloan Kettering, I was ahead of the curve. I was composting and I had to buy special garbage bags. You know what the big joke was? I was getting them in New York City, putting them in these special garbage bags, putting them on a diesel truck, and shipping them up to Milford, Connecticut, 2 hours away. So my sustainability, while great at the compost level,
Yep.
killed the greenhouse gases in the process.
Yeah.
So I think that those are some of the things. But we are seeing it, and I think a lot of it has to do with corporations having larger goals. And something that I talk about in dining a lot is in a corporate real estate environment, sustainability, the dining and the food operations are not the big money makers as far as energy and some of the other pieces of the puzzle. But to the employee and to the colleague, it's much more tangible and understanding. So you get a lot more mileage in the dining operations. And if I told people I got $1 million in energy credits, we're going to hit our energy targets, people will be like, great. You tell people you're using locally sourced products and you're bringing in vegetables from here, you're doing a farmer's market. People get that. It's tangible. It's a lot easier to understand. Is it getting you the same mileage as some of the other stuff? No, but from a marketing perspective, it's a lot easier for somebody to understand local produce, those kinds of things, and the sustainability around it, how things are grown, all of those kind of items. I feel as though, in our world, we have a better way of gaining mileage on that and telling a good story than some of the other items, which you might be making more money. To be a Gold LEED certified building nowadays is not as difficult as it used to be to get certification. But, to be a Green Restaurant Association, you got to go through hoops to really to prove your point that you're going to be, Green Restaurant Association certified.
Right. Well, and then, I mean, and you kind of alluded to it. I mean, do you think that the customers really care? I mean, it's nice when they're talking to their friends and saying, "Well, I work for company X and we're sustainable and we're going to meet all these targets by the 2030 and we're going to, blah 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 blah." And then they go home and they waste all this food or they, turn the heat up. I mean, do you think they really care, or is it a marketing ploy, or is it a, I don't know, just a nice to say in conversation kind of thing?
I do think they care. As the workforce gets younger, as some of the college students are coming in, and look, we talk about this quite a bit, and Mark, from the higher education days, that's the workforce of the future. So
Yeah.
if they're talking about it at that level and on the college campus, it's going to start becoming more spoken about as they move on. And I do see people do it, locally. It's funny. I'm a member of a CSA around here that we pick up every Thursday. And I got to tell you, we've been doing it for the last 3 or 4 years, and each year more and more people are joining in. People are getting a better understanding of what's happening.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
so I think people are getting it, but my biggest piece is I think it is growing because of the workforce lowering their age groups, right? I think as people start matriculating out of college and into the workforce, I think you're starting to see more people have a better understanding. Now, when you go to the grocery store, I think one of the pieces that's hurting this in general right now is this inflation discussion, right? Because, you know, organic, some of these items, it's going to cost more. And, as much as you may want to follow that, it could be cost prohibitive to go down some of these roads. Not everybody's in the position that, you're buying antibiotic, hormone-free chicken. I started doing it a couple of years ago, not because of even the antibiotic and hormone-free, but a better quality, a juicier chicken, all of those kinds of things. But you know what? It's sometimes, when you start seeing inflation at the rate that it is and specific items, it gets to be, when the avian flu had really hit. I mean, chicken prices and poultry prices in general were through the roof. So even if you wanted some of these items, again, could be cost prohibitive. So I think people are focused on it. People do like it. It's also, like we talked about earlier, it's tangible. It's easy for somebody to understand the food part. The energy piece, people aren't going to get as much. Um, but the food piece, and look, locally, everybody's got recycling programs, a lot of that kind of stuff. People are seeing that more in their local communities. Do we have a long way to go? Absolutely. There's a lot of old dogs like me that are still kind of, going down the road of what we used to do. But, you know,
Right.
I do see the effort there, and I do see that people are still talking about it. And, look, when you start getting like the Danielles and Jean Georges and all of these big name chefs out there talking about local produce, and you see them walking around the green markets, I don't know. I'm sure by you, everywhere you go, there's a green market. There's there's markets outside, local vendors coming. I can't tell you how much local honey I bought over time just to have in the house.
Yeah.
They say it's good for allergies, right? Take the local honey is the best way to go, is the best way to avoid allergies. So,
Yep.
I do think I think it's something that's around that's going to stay. As far as in the corporate structure, the measurement tools, up and down where that's going to go, but I do see people focused on it. And again, it's the simple things. It's local produce, some of those kinds of areas. Like the waste piece, that's all back of the house kind of stuff, trying to eliminate waste. And I find that people are more interested in who you're giving your extra progress, like the recycling, like for like to soup kitchens. That's
Yeah.
where people
Yeah.
get more interested than, hey, I didn't waste 50 portions of chicken, those kinds of things. But hey, I donated 25 portions of chicken to a local soup kitchen.
Yeah, interesting. And you brought it up earlier as the younger people are coming through the ranks and they're coming out of college and going to be the customer of the corporate companies that are out there, right? And I did I think the last podcast that I did was with a couple of college operators and clients, and they were talking about it, but and they indicated that this plant forward menuing isn't a trend, if you will. I mean, it's here, it's coming, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I don't know, are you seeing any of that? I mean, again, like you said, we're old dogs. Back in the day, you put plant forward stuff on the menu, and it looked great on the menu, but nobody was buying it. And so and what the college kids are saying now is, yeah, I want it. It better be on the menu because that's what I want. So, are you seeing that transition happening?
Yeah, not to the level of the college campus in corporate dining. I think, you know, it's interesting, right? Like vegetarians and vegans, they're a vocal group, but a small minority, right? So that's the one thing
Yep.
so there are people out there and you're hearing a lot, but when you put out the items, you know, it doesn't always sell. Like, so for me, I always would make sure that if they were doing a special hamburger at the grill for the day, that was their daily special, they had a vegetarian option and or a plant-based, right? So to manage it. So you have alternative options. But I would say you'd probably be 80-20 on a good day, on a good participation day. You might get
Right.
20% of that vegetarian and plant-based. And it's a shame too, because I've seen a real focus on some of these, vegetarian items and plant-based items. I was at a client location yesterday. They did a lentil barbacoa. I said, lentil barbacoa? Gotta tell you, it was delicious and it was very different and hearty. So people are coming up with items, but the classic, what do we call it? The core four, right? Your grill, salad bar, deli, pizza stations. Those are, your core four quick service items. And some of the hot food, it's up and down, and it's hard to make the individual plant-based items. And you know what? I think some of them are fantastic, some of the plant-based stuff that I've seen, and some of it is okay. The quality to me still is a range. It hasn't, it's not a consistent quality. The ones that are good, that I've had some really exceptional plant-based burgers, some of them I couldn't even tell if it was a real burger or a plant-based. And some of them, right away when it comes out that it's just, it's not the same.
Yeah, and again, I'm sure there's a lot of manufacturers that are working on that kind of stuff to try and make, a burger taste like a burger, but it's definitely not there yet in some of the things. This just popped into my head though, but curiosity is, one of the things that's starting to pop up in the international markets is cultured meat. So, taking a cell from a cow and growing it in the petri dish to make a hamburger. Are you seeing anything show up like that? And you travel the world. I mean,
Yeah.
is it in Asia? Are you seeing anything like that?
I haven't seen much of that, to be honest with you. And I think a lot of it is still being tested and driven. And I think, like some of the other items, is in order to get into the environments that we're in, the volumes have to be there. So in order, you can't just, like, we've seen a lot of similar, like when we talk about ugly produce, right? People want to buy the ugly produce and, right? But if you're doing a cafe that serves 1,000 people, you need more than just one box of tomatoes of ugly. So
That's
that's
right.
one of the
That's
pieces
right.
that I think, to size and scale that, I think people are, it's very interesting about how creative they're getting with this stuff. But, in order to feed a lot of these buildings, you're talking about, if I'm a contractor and I'm New York City, I'm going to need what, how many hundreds of pounds of an item to serve a station for the day. So I think that it's getting there, but it's a scale issue, I think, at this point before they can really, before those items could be rolled out. And I think it's still, a lot of it is in the test phase. I mean, I've seen them, I've heard about them, but I haven't really seen it into practice, into dining operations as of yet.
Yeah, it's going to weave into that sustainability thing because if you don't have to have as many cows, you don't need as much corn to feed the cows. You
Mhm.
don't need have the waste of the cow. You don't have the methane gas problem. All of
Mhm.
this stuff kind of goes away. And so from a sustainability standpoint, it has a good story. But, and again, I'm a little kludgy about it. I'm not sure I want to eat it, but the young people that are coming up are bumping into different things. I mean, we tried putting crickets on the menu at Microsoft, right? And I was surprised because the boomers like me stood back and said, "Oh my God, no, no, thanks." And the Gen Zs, X, Ys, and everything else leaned in and they got on their phone and they started, texting their friends. We got crickets on the menu down here. Come on down, blah blah blah. So you never know what might happen with some of that kludgy stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's true. I mean, look, it's how people kind of look at where they're going with it, and again, you're right. There are a lot of different opinions, and there's certainly different options. Some are easier or more palatable, I would say, than others.
Exactly, exactly. Well, so, you know, this has been great. Um, I think we got into some stuff that we probably didn't think we were going to get into, which I think is pretty good.
Yeah.
And what the way I like to kind of wrap this thing up, Rob, is I do a kind of a rapid fire question kind of a thing where I'll give you two I don't know, questions, I guess, and let you answer them as we kind of go in a flash form atmosphere here. So I'll hit you with a few of these, and then we'll get it wrapped up. So let's see. I'll do some easy ones. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Early riser or night owl?
I'm gonna have to split the one on there. I think I'm kind of both. I'm an early riser, but I need to see my late night talk shows. I need to at least catch through the monologue before I go to bed.
How do you get any sleep? Oh my God.
Well, it's when I'm not traveling, I have a little bit more of a luxury, but
Yeah.
listen, my youngest is 17 and she's still going to high school and she's out the door by 6:30, so you're still up in the morning anyhow. That's why the coffee machine has a timer on it, Mark.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly. Beach vacation or mountain escape?
I'm a beach vacation guy. Give me the sun. I live on the island, so give me an opportunity to be by water. I'm in.
All right. Sweet or savory?
I am a savory person. I'm the kind of person that will have an appetizer before dessert because I find it more interesting.
And last one, innovation or consistency?
Hmm, interesting. That's a good one. You know what? I'm a big fan of consistency in operations, but what I will say that I'm going to answer that one with innovation because I'll be honest, I just am not seeing the innovation out there that I'd expect at this time. And we kind of talked about it with the AI, how, it's great that you have it. Are you using it properly? Like those are, to innovate is, and again, like, some of this groups, like, how many different ways can you make a banh mi sandwich? You want to, you just, you change a couple of the pieces, it's still the same kind of comment inside. So I would love to see more innovation out there. And again, innovation, hopefully quality innovation can bring in and can bring consistencies with it too, if done right.
Well, yeah, and innovation seems like you have to be willing to accept, failure, if you will, and that's hard for people who want things consistent, right? And so there's always this kind of balance that you're trying to get through for sure.
Yeah, we always talked about fast fails, right? And the other part is, one of the things we tell people, and this is back to the leadership discussion. If you haven't failed, you haven't managed, right? It's in general because
That's right.
nobody bats 1,000, right? It doesn't happen. And by the way, it's okay because sometimes, failures make you look at things out of a different lens to make the improvements needed. That again, that's part of the idea. Like I'm a big fan of continuous improvement. I don't think that, waiting for the perfect moment to roll out a program is going to be the way to do it. Get it to a point where you
Yep.
feel good and comfortable, measure it every day, always look about how you can continuously improve. What are the little pieces that you could do to get it better? You're much better moving the needle incrementally than waiting for that one big swing to kind of to solve everybody's problems.
Yeah, and again, when I was at Microsoft, we lived by that. We called it the growth mentality. It's like fail fast and move on, right? I
Yeah.
mean, and you get into a rhythm of that. And it's funny because when you make decisions, you make them knowing that it's going to change. And so you're constantly making decisions based on what you know at the time, right? So yeah, totally get it. It's a good, I think, a good place to be. But
And look, as you said it before, Mark, your customer profile is changing too. So
ah,
the idea that you have to continue to innovate because because you're getting new groups of people coming into them. Some of the people like us we're starting to wane out of the market. Now you have to start focusing on the in part of the market. So that's where the balance of learning the AI and the data analytics are going to help you with some of the other pieces because, what the customer of today is not going to be the same customer in 5 years.
oh, no question about it.
May
And
not even
again,
be in 12 months.
well, and they're being taught in the college university environment, especially about food, but a lot of other things too. So to me, it's you gotta, as an operator, you got to keep track of what's going on there because they're going to be your customers, just like what we were talking about, right? So,
Absolutely.
Well, Rob, this has been fantastic. I mean, I think we could go on forever. You know, it's fantastic to hear your thoughts and hear, you know, what's going on in the industry and to bring that forward to our audience. So totally appreciate what you got going and keep doing what you're doing, man. I just it's fantastic. So thank you for being a part of this.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. I appreciate it, and look, love doing it. Love getting out there and you know helping people. Like I said, that's what got me into this consultancy. Not to just do it for myself, but to help other people do it, and you know that we can, as a group of Day One, help other people. You know, deliver exceptional services. That's what I would say when I end. You know, we're here to help clients deliver exceptional services to their colleagues. That's the best way to say it.
Okay. Thanks again, man. Good to
You
see
got
you.
it. Be well.
Okay.